many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Great.
Right before he said the words gang violence, which seemed like some kind of code word for them to shoot, you can see him turn to the camera and smile. Like right as he was saying those words, the way he formed that smile and then turned to the camera, that is just so eerie. But you can also see him take his hand and do something with his arm, which is pretty interesting because Charlie Kirk's bodyguard in the black does the exact same thing.
Over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Great. Do you know how?
There are even those that are saying that the bodyguard in black looks like the same exact bodyguard that was at the July 13th Trump rally shooting, and I can actually kind of see it.
You guys remember the attempted assassination of the president, right? Is that the same guy? They sure look like the same guy, don't they? Look at that chin. Doesn't that chin look awfully familiar? It looked familiar to me. Are these the same guy? Wouldn't that be odd for that guy to be there with Donald Trump when his shooting happens, and then he be there when Charlie Kirk's shooting happens as well? I mean, just speculation here, but isn't that weird? And tell me if I'm wrong. Get a closer video if you can. Somebody do the investigation, because something's...
I mean, yeah, if that's not him, then there's another bodyguard out there that looks very similar to him. In this next creepy video, apparently these notes are once again being found in food products, beauty products, and so forth, even animal products that were seen back in 2024, 2023, and so forth. This video from the Paranormal Files goes a little bit into these notes. Now, this video was back in 2024, but like I said, once again, it seems to be circulating.
I opened the box, and this is in it. And it has some very KKK's cross. Fucking... This was in my box of Velveeta.
So I'll admit, when I first saw that video, I took it with a grain of salt. But upon doing some further research, this is something that's happening very frequently. So all across Pennsylvania for the past few months, people have been finding these bizarre, cryptic, conspiracy-laden notes packaged with their food or other home good items. Someone found one of these notes in a Belvita box. The person at the beginning found theirs in a Velveeta box. And they've been found in dog food containers, pasta, cake mix, candy, and cookies. Whoever's putting these notes in these boxes has access to a lot of food. Now, obviously, whatever this person is putting on these notes is coded in some way. I haven't really found anybody that's been able to decipher what this note actually means, but it's incredibly offensive and incredibly bizarre, making references to a number of disturbing topics. It really is a mystery. Who has access to this much food? Who's bringing these notes in and who's putting them in boxes? Obviously, whatever this person has tried to do by spreading this message has worked, because their message is now blasted all over social media, whatever that message is. But I really hope that they can find who's doing this and question them, because, I don't know, it's kind of concerning that this person's able to put this sort of a thing in food. Who knows what else this person could add into food products, especially if they have this sort of access already.
Now, while he does see this as a bad thing, and I do agree with him that, somebody shouldn't just be putting anything into our food products, even if it's a note, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's offensive. I do think somebody's trying to give a cryptic warning, especially given the fact that the note also mentions Bill Gates, and the note is going into food. So I think this person may have good intentions behind this note. This next video comes from Too Much of a Coincidence, and yeah, I think about this from time to time, what happened to Anne Heche. Nothing really still adds up.
Are those news stories or video clips that just stick with you? Ones that were never resolved and never will be resolved. This right here, this is mine. The weirdest video ever. And before I go any further, this is for entertainment purposes only. This is my opinion. I'm not stating any of this as fact. There's a lot of weirdness surrounding this case. There's also a lot of misinterpreted information around this case. And I think, unfortunately, some of the misinterpretation clouds the facts. The fact that some of the information from this case can't be explained. Now, most people would say, oh, a lot of this stuff is just coincidence. But you know how I feel about coincidence. For instance, here's Anne Heche. And here's the lady whose house she crashed into. What a coinky-dink. And if you've not read the transcripts from the fire department and, dispatch, I would highly suggest that you do. She sat in that car for 45 minutes with them standing there. Because for over 20 minutes, they didn't realize that there was a person in there. And then they, for another 20 minutes, they couldn't get her out. And I'm not saying that there's anything abnormal about that, except for the lack of paramedics. And yes, some firefighters are also paramedics. But this was the scene of a vehicle crash. Wouldn't an ambulance be automatically sent there? And maybe I just do not understand how the body works in a situation like this, but you have sternal fractures that lead to your cause of death, along with smoke inhalation and thermal injuries. But you're able to still pop up out of what looks like a body bag. And I understand people are like, that's like a thermal blanket. But someone who is quote-unquote alive and breathing with smoke inhalation, you're going to cover their face up? And she did not have an oxygen mask on. Again, maybe those questions have been answered, but there's a lot of questions that have not been answered. In fact, I've listened to a couple of podcasts recently where people were re-talking about this case because it's weird. And there's a lot of weird stuff surrounding it still. What are your thoughts on this, and do you have any answers for me?
Since we're seeing a lot of people doing some very unusual things, I thought I'd go ahead and talk about mind control. Now, these next two videos talk about MK Ultra and a group of people on the news talking about how they are being gang stalked, another form of mind control.
I'm Christy Nicola. I was the subject in radiation as well as mind control and drug experiments performed by a man I knew as Dr. Green. And Donald Richard Ebner, my natural father, was involved with Dr. Green in the experiments. Dr. Green performed radiation experiments on me in 1970. All these experiments were performed on me in conjunction with mind control techniques and drugs in Tucson, Arizona. Dr. Green was using me mostly as a mind control subject. His objective was to gain control of my mind and train me to be a spy assassin. The first significant memory took place at Kansas City University in 1966. I was in what looked like a laboratory, and there seemed to be other children. I was strapped down, naked, spread eagle, on a table, on my back. Dr. Green had electrodes on my body, including my head. He used what looked like an overhead projector and repeatedly said he was burning different images into my brain while a red light flashed aimed at my forehead. In between each sequence, he used electric shock on my body and told me to go deeper and deeper, while repeating each image would go deeper into my brain, and I would do whatever he told me to do. I felt drugged because he had given me a shot before he started the procedure. When it was over, he gave me another shot. The next thing I remember, I was with my grandparents again in Tucson, Arizona. I was 4 years old. I'm Chris.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads. And those voices are being transmitted by microwave or other methods.
Well, several viewers asked us to investigate what they call electronic harassment. KMIR6's Angela Monroe joins us now with what she's discovered. Angela.
Electronic harassment, synthetic telepathy, voice-to-skull technology. Chances are you haven't heard of these terms, but after searching the internet, I found dozens of websites dedicated to the phenomenon and several Valley residents who say they're victims.
How much more can you invade me than to go into my brain?
It sounds like somebody else is reading the book, only it's thoughts.
We're not having a group hallucination. This is actually something that's happening.
These men all live in the area, didn't know each other before the voices started, and say someone is playing mind games with them.
Mostly it's a lot of derogatory comments about whatever you're thinking about.
Only time I ever had a whole sentence, he said, "This is not about you," which just frosted me. If it's not about me, what the hell am I going through all this for?
Kevin Bond says he used to have a normal life.
I was living in the San Diego area, was clerking for a federal judge, and I noticed that I was being followed by a whole bunch of people.
According to the websites, what Bond is describing is called gang stalking. He moved to Palm Springs to escape.
I started hearing, as you'll hear, hearing voices and what they'll call voice to skull or microwave hearing.
Bob Stansfield says his experience was similar and started a decade ago.
They were active in following me around here, and I started hearing the voices a little bit after the vehicular stalking.
Randall Ringer says the voices started when he was undergoing chemotherapy.
The first thing that was said was Randall Ringer. And I sat up straight and I went to into the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror. Looked myself in the eyes, and I said, did that really happen?
Bond says he's found more than 300 victims locally and is tracking others across the state through billboards. In Johnson Valley, a Freedom House just opened to help people who believe they are being targeted.
To many of you who find yourselves the object of covert harassment, that there is hope and that you are not alone, and that we are striving to find legislation and we're working towards freedom for all.
Derek Robinson leads a national group called Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance. He says he knows who's playing mind games.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads. And those voices are being transmitted by microwave or
These events currently going on in the world, we don't know what's real, what's fake, what's AI, what's not AI, and what's out there to mentally manipulate us. I thought it's a good time to go ahead and talk about Project MK Ultra. Now, for those that do not know what MK Ultra is, I'll go ahead and do a brief rundown, and this is coming directly from the CIA's own website because they actually declassified the program. Reading this article right here, it goes on to say MK Ultra was the code name for a covert CIA mind control and chemical interrogation research program run by the Office of Scientific Intelligence. Under MK Ultra, there were various ways of controlling the human behavior, anywhere from filling up an individual with drugs like LSD to horrific mental and physical abuse that would make even the hardest minds crack to carry out various tasks. The United States government said they terminated the project in the late 1960s, which is true. That is very true. And before that, they also terminated MK Delta, which was the predecessor to MK Ultra. So they terminated MK Delta and they continued with MK Ultra. So you can see what I'm getting at here. They terminated MK Ultra and they continued on with something far more advanced, which they indeed did. A lot of people believe that more advanced program being Project Monarch, which it is. They even apply electroshock therapy to a pregnant woman's womb to control the human behavior right away, right from the start. But let us go ahead and read these other programs that came after MK Ultra. I'm actually reading this from the esd.whs.mil website, which comes directly from the Department of Defense. I'll go ahead and link this PDF in the comment section below. I'll go ahead and pin it so you can go ahead and follow along. So apparently this is where all the information comes from. It goes on to say that in testimony on August 3rd, 1977, before a joint session of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and the Senate Subcommittee on Health and Scientific Research, the Director of Central Intelligence reported that the Central Intelligence Agency had located a number of boxes of documents consisting largely of financial records relating to experiments using human subjects in which drugs were tested for mind control and behavior modification purposes. But what this article leaves out is the extreme physical and mental abuse that these human subjects went through. They're only talking about the drugs because it relates to the financial records. But the PDF goes on to say that the director testified that it appeared that 3 other projects described by these documents, projects designated MK Search, MK Often, and MK Chickwit, were Department of Defense programs with which the Central Intelligence Agency had had some contact. The director also described 3 other projects designated MK Ultra, MK Delta, and MK Naomi, which were primarily Central Intelligence Agency projects, but which might have had some Department of Defense involvement. You can see right here, MK Delta, this was apparently the first project established by the CIA in October of 1952 for the use of biochemicals in clandestine operations. It may have never been implemented operationally. I don't believe this was the first. I believe this was the first one where the financials came into question, but you can also see MK Ultra here, which they say was the successor project to MK Delta. You can see MK Naomi here. This project began in the 1950s and was terminated at least with the respect to biological projects in 1969. This may have also been the successor to Project MK Delta. Its purpose was to stockpile severely incapacitating and lethal materials and to develop gadgetry for the dissemination of these materials. But here's where we come to the successor of MK Ultra, which would be MK Search. This was apparently a successor project to MK Ultra, which began in 1965 as they were getting rid of MK Ultra and was terminated in 1973. The objective of the project was to develop a capability to manipulate human behavior in a predictable manner through the use of drugs. Then we have MK Chickwit. This was apparently a part of the MK Search program. Its objective was to identify new drug developments in Europe and Asia and to obtain information and samples. Then next, MK Often. This was also apparently a part of the MK Search program. Its objective was to test the behavioral and toxic effects of certain drugs on animals and humans. This part goes on to say how in September of 1977, the agency permitted the Department of Defense representatives to search additional boxes containing MK Ultra records. Both sets of materials consisted of approvals of advances of funds, vouchers, and accounting records relating to these projects. So as you can see, they terminate the projects, they terminate the name like MK Ultra, but then they continue on with far more advanced programs. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and read this whole PDF. You can go ahead and read it yourself. Like I said, I will go ahead and link it. But I do also want to read this part right here where it says Army programs. It appears from the available documents that the Army was involved in one aspect of the Central Intelligence Agency project designated as MK Chickwit and two aspects of a counterpart project designated as MK Often. The document search is described in Selection A below, and each of the Army programs is described in Section B below. So, in a nutshell, these two programs are identified as identification of new drugs with behavioral effects, and number two, databases on evaluation of pharmacological products, and they want us to believe that the Army did not have any human test subjects. They just funded for the collection of this information. But let us not forget that in the beginning of 2025, we had two big suspicious events involving members of the military, more specifically members of Fort Bragg. We had what happened in New Orleans and the individual that caused what happened in Las Vegas, the Cybertruck explosion. So I don't really think their experiment stopped either. There was a FOIA request on the CIA website for MK Search, and as you can see, they present us with just this. But there is a file attachment MK Ultra subproject, and a lot of MK Search is actually still classified. There is some declassified information, but it's hard to read. I'll also go ahead and pin this in the comment section as well. But yeah, a lot of it is still classified. But make no mistake about it, they're still running these very advanced programs today and terminating the old ones. Something else took MK Search's place, and whatever that was, something else took its place. And I do believe that something far more advanced involves the TV and media, something that can target the mass population as a whole through music, movies, the news, and so forth. Programs now designated to control the human behavior on a mass scale. And it's not just the United States government, but all these governments around the world, China and so forth. Because all these governments that we think are enemies on TV are all in the World Economic Forum giving very similar speeches and all friendly to one another. They are involved in the Bilderberg meetings and other meetings that the public is not privy to. They also control us through food and through the use of AI. Anything that's uploaded on the internet that we see that may be suspicious or strange or something they may be caught involved in, the first thing people will say is that it's just AI, because we're presented as the public with very powerful AI like Google VO3. So again, like I said in the beginning, we don't know what's real, we don't know what's fake, and I do believe that's what's a part of this new mind control project, this far more advanced one. But anyway, we still talk about these news stories, and more than ever, we have to use our discernment.
Ashley live for us in studio tonight. Good evening, Morgan.
Good evening, Sean. So Representative Scott spoke this morning at a legislative committee in Boise. She's worried about the possibility that people are eating other people and may not know they're doing so. She says with the rise in human composting, which is legal in several states as a means of dealing with human remains, she was concerned about what other uses may be found. During today's meeting, she explains what finally convinced her to act.
I was on a plane this summer, and I was watching, you just kind of randomly go through channels, and I watched a video of some food show, and the three contestants tasted the food and they had to guess what was in it. It was some kind of a sausage. And one of the options they told these people that was in the food was human flesh. And I thought, at that point, and this was on a plane this year, I thought, this is going to be normalized at some point. The way our society's going and the direction we're going, this is going to be normalized.
Morgan Ashley live for us in studio tonight. Good evening, Morgan.
Good evening, Sean. So Representative Scott spoke this morning.
So big media, they want us to get comfortable with the idea that Soylent Green is people. Now make no mistake about it, it's been like that for a long time now, for years. They just want us now to get comfortable with it. They want these TV shows to show us that, hey, eating a sausage made of human really tastes no different than any other types of sausage. Now, I mean, look at this news article published by Business Insider. Here's how Hannibal creates food that resembles human flesh and looks delicious. We were talking about a commercial not too long ago, a KFC commercial that had these type of undertones where they show us that they turn people basically into chicken tenders. You may be saying these food shows might be doing this for ratings, they're being facetious, but we also have to remember that all but one state in the United States outlaws Soylent Green is people, and that being Idaho. There's already things like human composting, which turns bodies into fertilizer to help nourish trees and plants and other things, but let's be honest, I wouldn't doubt one bit they're also taking this and, again, adding it into the food. I have covered multiple news stories on this channel where bodies are missing from funeral homes or inside caskets, or family members, they'll go ahead and get their loved ones cremated, and what they'll get in return is just dirt. It's a big business, and there's a lot of money that goes into this. There are also many people out there that do the calculations between how many animals there are and all of these fast food chains and grocery stores and so forth that have animal products, and the numbers just do not add up. And again, like with what I said when it came to the whole mind control thing, is not just something that's happening in the United States. This is a worldwide business. Take, for example, this news clip involving China that happened just 9 months ago.
The illegal trade of human corpses has been uncovered. Instead of being cremated, over 4,000 bodies were secretly sold to two major biomaterial companies which are tied to the state. The corpses were then dissected and turned into bone grafting materials, generating millions of dollars in revenue over a span of 8 years. The scheme involving funeral homes, doctors, and a state-owned enterprise has exposed a dark side of China's medical industry. Here's our report with more.
In northern China, prosecutors have uncovered a disturbing decade-long scheme involving the illegal sale of corpses meant for cremation. This scheme, spanning at least 7 provinces, has implicated dozens of suspects, including funeral home managers, doctors, and company shareholders. At the center of this shocking case are 2 companies, Shanxi Osteorad Biomaterial and Sichuan Hengpu Technology. From 2015 to 2023, these companies illegally obtained more than 4,000 corpses, generating nearly $53 million in revenue. The cadavers were collected from funeral homes across various localities and were then dissected, stored, and eventually processed into biomaterial devices used in bone grafting procedures. The scheme was not limited to just the companies. Funeral homes in the southwestern provinces of Yunnan, Guizhou, and Sichuan, as well as in the Chongqing municipality, played a crucial role. These funeral homes charged families for cremation services, but instead sold the corpses to hospitals for dissection and storage. In some cases, unclaimed bodies were chosen for the illegal trade. A staff member at the anatomy department of Guilin Medical University purchased at least 450 corpses from 3 of these funeral homes, paying around $125 per body. The bodies were then sold to Shanxi Osteorad for up to $1,400 each. In another instance, a transplant surgeon at the affiliated hospital of Qingdao University processed and sold at least 10 bodies to the company, earning between $1,400 and $3,000 per corpse. Shanxi Osteorad staff not only mishandled the cadavers, but also fabricated the necessary documentation to cover their tracks. This allowed them to bypass strict regulatory oversight that typically governs the use of cadaveric tissue for medical purposes.
So yeah, there are many organizations out there, whether they are biotech companies, food companies, and so forth. They will not allow thousands of dollars to just waste in the ground, or if you're doing cremation, they're not going to allow thousands of dollars to burn up in flames, especially when these bodies have multi-purposes. This next video comes from Bobby Curtis Lee, and there is absolutely no way that this was just an accident. Now, this video is about 8 minutes long, but it's just mind-blowing the things she says and how police, again, investigators just determined that no foul play, nothing to see here.
So I'm going to tell you how this woman died, and then I want you to tell me if you think this was just an accident, because the police are saying it was, but I'm just not buying it. So in the early morning hours of November 19th, 2011, 20-year-old Jalea Davis was found dead laying in the middle of the road on Interstate 77 near Parkersburg, West Virginia. One of her legs was broken in half, bone exposed, her right breast was missing, and she had been decapitated. Her car was found parked a little ways down the road near mile marker 181, still running, doors locked, and the right side passenger window smashed open. Police say that she must have hit the guardrail and then was somehow ejected out of this window, and then run over by her own car. But the damage to her car wasn't that bad, yet the trunk and inside was covered in blood. And the weirdest part, Jalea was naked from the waist up, and her bloodied coat and bra were neatly draped over the guardrail next to her body. Police say she died of just a tragic road accident, but so much evidence suggests that this was a major cover-up, and I'm personally not buying the accident theory, so let's talk about it. Jalea Davis was 20 years old when she suddenly and very mysteriously died in 2011. She left her home on the evening of November 18th at around 5 p.m. to go and hang out with some new friends that she recently made. Her friends were Kristen, Jordan, Freddie, and Katie, and she'd only known them for about 3 months. So after leaving that night, Jalea went to Kristen's house at around 7 p.m. and the two baked cookies and then got ready to go to a house party in Parkersburg, West Virginia. The two friends got to the house party at around 9 p.m. where they met up with Jordan and Freddie, who were already there. They all hung out for about 2 hours before they all piled into a car and went to pick up their fifth friend Katie at a nearby Hardee's. They made a quick stop at the store to buy some more alcohol, and then they all went back to the house party where they continued to drink and have fun. According to Kristen, Jalea was drinking a lot and had like 16 shots, but to others, Jalea didn't seem that drunk. A few hours into the party is when the night kind of starts to take a turn. It was reported that at some point, Katie's ex-boyfriend showed up and he and Jalea were flirting and dancing together, which angered Katie. At around 3 a.m., they all left the party, and it was around this time that some kind of altercation occurred that altered the rest of the night. The original plan was for Jalea to stay the night with Kristen, but at around 3:23 a.m., Jalea called her sister and asked her to come and pick her up at a gas station instead. Her sister could hear Kristen in the background, and then Jalea turned to her and said, quote, "Give me the keys," end quote. The call then ended, but just a few minutes later, Jalea called her sister back, and this time around she was audibly hysterical, like something really bad had happened. She was calling Kristen a bad friend and a bunch of really bad names, and now she wanted to be picked up at a different location, which was a rest stop near Williamstown. Jalea's sister asked her what happened and tried to calm her down, but all Jalea said was that she would tell her everything when they were together. But sadly, Jalea never got the chance to tell her, because within 15 minutes she would be under extremely mysterious circumstances. Her sister tried driving out to the rest stop, but she couldn't find Jalea, and she even tried calling her a few times and got no response. So she called Kristen, the last known person to be with her, but she too said that she didn't know where Jalea went after they split up. During this period of 15 minutes, 3 911 calls would be placed, and this is when things start to get strange. So at 3:48 a.m., a truck driver called 911 to report a possible car accident. He found a car near mile marker 181 on Interstate 77, motionless but still running. The back end of it, though, was covered in blood. He got out of his car and walked a little bit further down the road and told the operator that he could see what he thought was a mangled deer in the middle of the road. He was hoping that that's what it was at least, but then he got closer, and what he saw was something straight out of a nightmare. Laying in the oncoming left-hand lane was Jalea's contorted body. Her leg was broken, snapped in half, and what's odd is that she was naked from the waist up. Her right breast was missing, and she'd been decapitated. died. This was obviously a really gruesome scene, but what police found once they arrived is mind-boggling. What's horrible to think about though is that Julia's sister stumbled across the crime scene before police were able to get there, and she saw her sister's mangled body and head. Something immediately caught her attention though, as well as the truck drivers, because right next to Julia's body was her white bloodied coat and her bra, neatly folded over the guardrail, which it doesn't take a genius to know, but if you've been to there's no way that you would have been able to proceed to take off your own clothes and drape them over the railing before dying. So then the Wood County Sheriff's Department gets there. They noticed that Julia's car was about 1/10 of a mile down the road from where her body was found. Like I said, it was still running with the headlights on, but all of the doors were locked and the driver's side airbag was deployed. On top of this, the passenger side window was smashed open, and this car was completely bloodstained. There was blood all over the back of her car and in the trunk, as well as in the passenger wheel well, under the car, and in a broken headlight. To make things even stranger, there was a large bloody handprint on the inside of the driver's door handle and on the armrest. Police then found a second person's DNA on the shift plate. To me, this indicates that either someone was already injured inside the car before crashing, or someone else was at the crime scene before her body was discovered and went back inside Julia's car. This lines up with the way her clothes were found neatly draped over the railing, because how in the world would her clothes have fallen off from a car wreck like that? They just wouldn't. But for how badly Julia was injured, you'd think that the damage to her car would be pretty significant, right? Well, it wasn't. In fact, it didn't really look that damaged given the circumstances. The crime scene itself was enough to raise major red flags though, because first you have her clothes being tampered with, but then police found acceleration marks leading away from a pool of blood and Julia's body. This suggests that at the very least, someone else was at the scene before the 911 call was placed. So police investigated, but it didn't take them long to rule Julia's death as an accident, even with the second DNA found in the car. According to authorities, they believe that Julia was driving her own car drunk and struck the guardrail. They assume that she wasn't wearing a seatbelt and somehow got ejected from the car out of the passenger side window, and then she was run over by her own car. After being hit by her own car, police say that her body then somehow rolled into the oncoming lane and was then struck again by a tractor trailer. Officially, the case is closed, stating that Julia died of a tragic road accident, and the alcohol was a contributing factor. They backed this up with the toxicology report that showed her blood alcohol level as 0.19, which is over twice the legal limit. They say no foul play was involved, yet some things still don't really add up, such as her friend's statements, the ones that were with her right before she died. They all seem to reportedly change a few times, and when Kristen was interviewed the first time, she voluntarily told the police how she thinks Julia died, which didn't add up at all and is just a really weird thing to say. And even though this doesn't necessarily mean anything, right after this she lawyered up. A lot of people, including Julia's family, believe that she was and that this was a huge cover-up. A lot of people feel this way because 3 of the 4 friends that were with Julia that night have family in law enforcement. Specifically Kristen, whose grandpa was a sheriff at the same police department that was investigating Julia's death. And it doesn't make it any better when, not long after her friend's death, Kristen goes on to make tweets like this. It's just not right to be rude to a family, especially publicly when they are experiencing such a major loss like this. Julia's family believes that she was run over by her own car with someone else driving, possibly multiple times with how badly she was injured. And one of the main reasons they feel that someone else was involved was the way Julia's clothes were found. They were pretty bloody, but it looked like someone maybe wiped their own bloody hands on them before hanging them over the railing. This is all very suspicious, and then you have reports of her friends reportedly telling other people in town incriminating details about that night, details that they never mentioned to police. It's just crazy to me that what happened to Julia and how gruesome it was happened within a 15-minute time frame, and the fact that we don't know what exactly happened between Julia and Kristen that caused her to be so upset. Some think it was because her friends were trying to keep her car keys from her in order to prevent her from driving drunk, and that's why she said, "Give me the keys." But it also doesn't make sense on how she was hit with her own car like investigators say. You have police telling you that it was an accident on one hand, but on the other, there's so much evidence suggesting foul play was involved. Her mom has gone on to create this Facebook page in hopes of finding justice for her daughter, and she also has this GoFundMe to help continue funding her private investigation, as well as a petition to get Julia's case reopened. If you feel so inclined, you can show your support in these ways, or simply just sharing Julia's story with everyone you know. Someone definitely knows something, and her family deserves justice. But it's now been 14 years, and whatever happened to Julia at mile marker 181 remains a mystery.